Thanks to everyone for joining us down the rabbit hole. I'm Trevor Hall.
And I'm Calvin Zeljak. Let's get into it. Welcome in, everybody. Calvin Zeljak here with you on behalf of Rabbit Hole Sports with our NFL Week 1 reaction. So, first and foremost, I hope everyone enjoyed our first weekend slate of games. Well, weekday and weekend, right? Because we got Thursday and Monday as well. But you get what I mean. I hope everyone enjoyed Week 1 of the NFL season. We certainly had a lot of great action, a lot of entertaining storylines, for better or worse, depending on what team you may be a fan of or what perspective you have on things. But nevertheless, an extremely interesting first week, and we're going to get right into it here in a second. Just want to let everyone know, if you haven't checked out our college football reactions, that was posted up on either Sunday or Monday. I'm blanking exactly on which day. I'm in Hawaii right now, and my brain is so foggy. This is like my 7th or 8th take just trying to record the intro here. I just cannot speak for the life of me today. I don't know what is going on. Need to trying to let the Lord give me the words right now, and they are just not coming through to my brain. So bear with me if I'm mumbling along at any point, just uttering nonsense. That's kind of half the episodes anyway, I feel like. But nevertheless, if you haven't checked out our college football reactions, that was, again, either posted Sunday or Monday. If you want to check those out, feel free to do so. It should be the episode just below this one on our Spotify. And then, of course, if you want to check out our website, rabbitholesports.com, I would love if you guys did that as well. Any support is much appreciated. Not too much content up there at the moment. I believe we just have a blog and then the link to our podcast here on Spotify. And then another quick note, we will be looking into getting the podcast up on other platforms, Apple Music being the number one spot I can think of that we'll be looking to add, just to make it more easily accessible to as many people as possible, because we want you guys to get all the sports info you need, as if there isn't enough of it out there already, I guess, but we're trying to stand out a little bit. So anyway, this is going to be our NFL Week 1 reactions. I got about 5.5-ish storylines to touch on, and we'll start with the Thursday night game. I feel like that's the right place to start, just because it was the first game, right? And so the big storyline there, obviously Chris Jones was not playing. Travis Kelce was hurt. Since then, Jones has come. What? Excuse me? Forgive me, Lord. I repent. Chris Jones and the Chiefs have agreed to terms on a restructured deal for this season, so he should be back in action for them. Travis Kelce, I haven't seen too much in terms of injury updates on him. I believe the expectation is he will play in their next game, but the main storyline of that game is the Detroit Lions, right? They looked much better defensively, and, I mean, the offense wasn't, as much as people, from what I was seeing on social media, were highlighting how the Chiefs' defense was struggling to get pressure on Goff without Chris Jones, which was certainly the case to a degree, the defense only conceded 14 points, right? And then the Lions got a pick six on some Kadarius Toney brick mitts. So, that's probably the number one storyline for the Chiefs. Can Kadarius Toney relearn to catch? Because he is an extremely talented player. And for him to drop 3 passes, and essentially, obviously, you look at the grand scheme of things, there's going to be a lot of plays that you can pick apart as the turning point of the game. But just the most glaring one from a fan perspective, right, is that he dropped a pass that led to a pick six, and they lost by 1. So that's brutal. Could not be worse of a start for him personally, but he's a tremendous player. I expect him to still have a good season. If you have him in fantasy, don't give up on him yet, I would say. Maybe a week on the bench or something. I don't know. To each their own. But he's a tremendously talented player, but definitely a brutal way to start the game. But we'll move to the Lions. So the Lions, man, they kind of seem penciled in to be the darling this year. I don't like to push the narrative that the NFL is scripted, right? That ruins everything, and it's just impossible to fully script things on a football field, I feel like. So, we're not going to dive into that narrative, but the Lions looked much better, and this could be a really awesome season for Detroit fans. And, man, I just want to reiterate, I really hope it is a good season for the Lions. And it could not be a better start, right? Primetime game, and you get a win. I guess maybe the last time I can remember, well, the Lions ended last season on primetime, against the Packers. So I guess that would be the last time before this game. But before that, the last time I could remember them in like a Sunday night game would be when Tom Brady and the Patriots came to visit the Lions. When Matt Patricia was in his first season as head coach, and the Lions actually won the game, and there was a sentiment then that the Lions were turning a corner, and they just never did under Matt Patricia. That was a disaster of an era. So, listen, the sentiment I'm trying to put out here right now is good for the Lions. That was a great win. Obviously, it doesn't make the whole season, but they're on the right track, and it seems like they got the perfect attitude going forward. They're not going to let one win go to their head. They're going to keep working, keep grinding. That's the mentality of their head coach, Dan Campbell, and it seems that that's the mentality of the entire team. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was asking all the fans to show up to their first home game this week in ski masks, in Detroit Lions blue ski masks. So, listen, they're all in. It should be an exciting year for Detroit. In terms of Kansas City in that game, I wouldn't be overly concerned. Obviously, again, the Kadarius Toney thing was just a bad way to start the year. But you're also missing two of your top-end players. And if you really look at the Chiefs' roster top to bottom, right, I'm not trying to say it's a bad roster, but it's definitely a top-heavy roster. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones are definitely really vital pieces to that team. And without them there, they're a very different team, right? Patrick Mahomes is awesome. At this point, I think he's hands down the best quarterback in the league. I don't know how anyone can really stir up a debate on that, but if you want to try to, be my guest, I suppose. But that seems like a very downhill battle. But nevertheless, on this show, we love debate, we love conversation. So if anyone wants to push the narrative that someone is better and lay out a good case for it, I'm all ears. But the general consensus, it seems like, around the league is that man is the best quarterback in the league. But even the best quarterback in the league is going to need some help from time to time, right? Or at least maybe not even help, just people who can catch the ball, right? So from the Chiefs' perspective, I wouldn't be overly concerned about this one game. I would take that more as an exciting win for the Detroit Lions on the road in arguably the most hostile environment in the entire league, in prime time. Everyone's watching. Great win for the Lions. Great win for the Lions. So I'll leave that there. Again, the tough part about week one is so much stuff happens that seems fairly predictable, and so much stuff happens that seems really unpredictable. And it's almost impossible to figure out week one what's real and what isn't. And a lot of that just because teams use the preseason nowadays so differently, right? Like, a lot of these guys aren't playing a ton in the preseason. Now, I felt like this season there was a little bit more of a push from teams to get their guys out playing during the preseason. So, again, we'll see as the season progresses, right? We don't want to take 1 week and use that as the measuring stick for the entire year. But, how much we put into a week one performance, is really tough to gauge, is what I'm trying to get at here. So I have about 4 or 5 other storylines to get into here that I think will be interesting to look at throughout the rest of the season. And the first is the Cowboys defense, because that was a special performance. That was a special performance by the Dallas Cowboys defense. And listen, we've seen them look like that, I'll say last year, we saw them look like that at times, in spurts. At times, it looked like one of the best defenses in the league, right? And in week one, it looked like it would be the best defense in the league. So Cowboys fans should be really excited about that. Now, the thing is, I felt like last year their defense started really good and then just wasn't quite as good during the middle portion of the year and then kind of refound themselves at the end of the year. But at the same time, it felt like once they refound themselves, it seemed Dak Prescott. What? Who? Huh? Dak Prescott had kind of taken a step back at the end of the year when the defense refound itself. So if the Cowboys can get everything aligned, they have the talent to go with anyone in the league. And as someone who just, I don't know how to put this. It really rubs me the wrong way how Dallas Cowboy fans just approach their fandom, I guess is the way to put it. Right? Like, it's, not that it's wrong, but they just always feel like their team is good no matter what, where it, at times it's delusional the way they talk about their team sometimes. But listen, as much as that bothers me, as much as I'm not a full Stephen A. Smith, Cowboy hater, although I do find it entertaining when he, talks his talk about the Cowboys. But at the end of the day, if there's a Cowboy team that's going to, at least get him back into the NFC Championship for the first time in 30 years almost, get them back to a Super Bowl for the first time in, again, almost 30 years, this team has as good of a shot as any they've had from the last time they won up until now. This team is very good, it's very talented, and really it seems it'll go as Dak Prescott goes. It feels like the defense is going to be elite, and I know there was a lot of talk they moved off of Kellen Moore as offensive coordinator. He's now with the Chargers as well. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but it seems like their effort is to make the offense more simplified, in essence, and we'll see if that helps Dak. And it's not even necessarily that the Cowboys' offense needs to get better from last year. They just need to get better at controlling games, is what I would say. Felt like there were a lot of times last year where they'd either be in a game or controlling a game, and there would just be something dumb that would happen on the offensive side of the ball that would either let a team get back into the game or put the Cowboys out of the game that they were in before said thing happened. So that's what they got to figure out. How can they avoid those catastrophic mistakes that really have cost them a lot of games in recent years? And that was really my sentiment about the Texas Longhorns for these past several years. Really talented team, just the worst mistakes imaginable at the worst time imaginable. So if the Cowboys can get that right, and I feel like that's what more of the change in their offensive philosophy was. It wasn't necessarily that they feel they'll be more high-powered. Again, I'm not in the room there, so I don't know the perspective, but at least to me, and from seeing the little bit I was able to of the Cowboys on offense in Week 1, it just seemed like they were trying to make things more manageable and minimize risk, which is really where their offense needs to be. So again, as much as the Cowboys winning a Super Bowl would just be, that would be a hard thing for a lot of us to go through, right? Having to listen to the Cowboy fans talk if they win the Super Bowl. But listen, I'm just going to let everyone know, just in case, prepare yourselves now, because it's a very real possibility. Going off of that one game, and again, don't put too much into it. We'll see how things progress. The Cowboys always seem to have a game like that where they just absolutely dog wipe a team that's perceived to be pretty good. But, the Giants were a team I thought would be even a little better than they were last year. And, the Cowboys assaulted them. They assaulted them. Like, the whole Cowboys roster probably could have been booked by New York PD for assault after that game. That was brutal. And it was a primetime game, which is what made it even worse or better, again, depending on if you're an anti-Cowboys fan or a Cowboys fan. So, if you are a Cowboys fan, I'd be pretty excited, but if you could just please, for all of us, just be a little tempered in the way you express it and just be okay with letting the season play out, we'd all appreciate it. But again, dealer's choice. So, let's get to our next subject, and that is going to be Tua and the Miami Dolphins, which I'm not going to lie. Well, okay, I understand that all the storylines were centered around the Bills and the Jets this offseason in the AFC East. And I mean, the Rodgers to the Jets storyline was certainly the most dominant storyline of the offseason, right? And then the Bills, it just, I don't even know what I'm. It's like the American sweetheart team, right? Like people around the NFL, like if their team's not going to win the Super Bowl, it feels like a lot of people would be okay with the Bills winning the Super Bowl just because of the history of the team and then the DeMar Hamlin storyline that happened last year on top of it, right? It would be awesome to see the Bills win the Super Bowl, and so I certainly understand the attention going to the Jets and the Bills, both in the offseason and going into this season. But I'm here to tell you right now, the Miami Dolphins are as legit as any team in the National Football League. They really are. And, you can... Listen, I'm not the biggest Tua fan, necessarily. He certainly has, parts to his game that you would want to be better in a perfect world, right? But in terms of making the right decision and ball placement, he's almost as good as anyone in the league. And you can argue with me on that all you want. Cut on the film. People who know how to play quarterback will see that the ball consistently goes where it should go. The ball is consistently placed where it should be placed. And the thing he's getting really, really good at now is looking off defenders, right? And the reason I say it's such a big improvement is last year when the Dolphins and Chargers played, the Chargers stifled the Dolphins' offense in a way it hadn't been stifled the entire season by playing press man coverage, right? And the Chargers used that same strategy for the most part in this game on Sunday against the Dolphins. And Tua put up 466 yards on him. Man. My brother's a Dolphins fan, so I know he's been high on this team for a long time, but as much as I'm not a Dolphins fan, I gotta tell you, this team's legit. The Miami Dolphins are legit. They're a legit team. And they still got Jalen Ramsey coming back at some point. So if Tua can stay healthy, and if that first game was any indication of the growth he's made over the offseason, A, dark horse MVP candidate. B, I don't want to call him a dark horse, but just based on the perception they've had throughout the offseason, I feel like, I would say the Dolphins are absolutely a dark horse Super Bowl contender. They have arguably the best roster in the entire AFC. I think they have the best roster in the AFC East. I think it's better than the Jets. I think it's better than the Bills. And I think it's better than the Patriots. Again, people are going to have different preferences. In terms of the entire AFC, I mean, it's hard, shoot, man. I'll just leave it at that. Let's see what the Dolphins do. The Dolphins opened some eyes on Sunday, I would say. Absolutely. And as a Chargers fan, I certainly understand that it's just a very Chargers thing to not be good, I guess is the way I would put it. That's not even the way to put it. All right. I'll put it this way, right? Me and my friends were watching the Chargers-Jaguars playoff game, right? And the Chargers went up 27-0, and I said, knowing the Chargers, they will find a way to lose the game. And we all know what happened. They lost the game, right? That's the Chargers franchise. Just looking really, really amazing to the point where you're like, wow, this could be the best team in the league. And then just the most unexplainable, blasphemous stuff happens. I say happens to them, and that makes it sound like it's out of their control, and it's absolutely not. But that they just find a way to accomplish things and lose games in ways that you actually have to see to believe. And for anyone that doesn't believe me, try to find the endings to essentially like the first 6 or 7 games of the 2016 Chargers season. All right? Just the most inexplicable losses you will ever see. And that's essentially the epitome of the franchise, right? And the Chargers are the team I grew up rooting for. I'm from San Diego. that logo means so much to me. It's the reason, I won't say the reason, I really owe it to my dad 100%, but in terms of teams that really, drove my passion in sports, the Chargers are one of the big three. It would be the Chargers, the Padres, and then the University of Michigan. And so having them taken away from San Diego ripped my heart out. And so I cannot root for them per se, I will say. I just can't root for a team from Los Angeles. I will not do it. But if I had to pick one logo that I wanted to represent greatness in the NFL, I absolutely want it to be the Chargers logo. Now, my long-term goal would be to make enough money to buy the team and move them back to San Diego. That's my long-term goal. That's what this podcast is starting here, right? We're going to move the Chargers back to San Diego. We're going to figure it out. We're not going to rent a stadium from another team in a city that doesn't want you. What are we doing? What are we doing? Anyway, enough about the Chargers. So back to the main point. Look out for the Dolphins. With that being said, I want to briefly touch on, just because, I want to briefly touch on the Chicago Bears. And the main reason is because last year, I don't even know if my friends all of them will remember this, but at one point last year, we were thinking, we need to come up with a team we can all root for that's not super good, and it's just kind of fun, and we're all going to have fun with it, right? And we chose the Bears, right? Because they had the number one pick in the NFL draft. And then I started, if you go on rabbitholesports.com, the one blog we do have up there so far is called the Unqualified GM blog. It's a blog I started for my senior project, back in February, I believe, is when I started writing it. But anyway, what it is essentially I am laying out rebuilds for teams in different sports. And so for the project I was doing to begin this blog, I chose one NFL team, one NBA team, one MLB team. And the NFL team I chose was the Bears, right? And so I got really into the roster and the moves they were making and all of that, right? And I convinced myself that the Bears could be a sleeper playoff team this year. Boy, did that look foolish on Sunday. They were bad. They were bad. That was really, really bad. Really bad. And I should have known, right? I should have known. Every team I root for, poverty comes before the riches. So, Bears fans, I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have hopped in. I don't have a real NFL team now, so I'm kind of adopting the Bears as mine. I've always had this weird liking towards the Bears that I've never really understood. And maybe this is why, right? I don't know. But anyway, I wouldn't consider myself a diehard Bears fan, but I'm low-key rooting for the Bears a little bit. But I'm so sorry, Bears fans, if I have brought my sports curse along with me, because we may be suffering for about another decade, and then we'll win the division 3 or 4 years in a row, probably. So, take that as you want. But anyway, that was not good. That was not good, right? For all the excitement of, just what they were able to do with the roster in the offseason. They made some quality signings, and that could just be part of it too, right? Maybe those guys just need to play some games together before things click. That could certainly be the case. But man, just with all the excitement of the roster turnover in the offseason, and then obviously Aaron Rodgers leaving Green Bay, going to the Jets, right? It felt like it was the time where the Bears were going to start having a little bit more of a say in that rivalry, right? Make it a little more of an actual rivalry. I mean, that's probably I don't want to over-conclude, I guess is what I'm trying to say, but the Bears-Packers rivalry is one of the best historic rivalries in the sport, right? And so for the Packers to just be dominating that rivalry the way they have for so long definitely isn't fun. It's definitely not fun. So, with all that buildup and the hope that things would turn, for that to be the first game of the season and it to go the way it did, that was really tough. That was really tough. But let's put it in perspective. Well, I don't want to compare misery, I guess you would say, but Jets fans, my condolences. Wow. You always know injuries are part of the game, right? We always know that. It's football. But man, that Really? Wow. I can't even get out words. Like, I'm just reliving the moment in my head right. It seems fake. It seems fake that Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles 4 plays into the season, and one of them wasn't a real play, so technically it's 3 plays. His season was 75 seconds long. And it feels like I say we as football fans, but the Jets fan base certainly is going to feel this way more than any of us do, that they got robbed. They got robbed of potentially their best season in a long time. But I will say this. The Jets found a way to win that game. That's not a small thing, right? It would be so easy, not necessarily on the whole season, but at least for that night, right, to have thrown in the towel and phoned it in. Because that's devastating. That's heartbreaking. I'm sure people have seen Garrett Wilson's quote about his conversation with Rodgers in the locker room at halftime. Like, that's heartbreaking stuff, right? And I think in a sick way, it just reminds us that we can't put all of our faith and trust into a singular human being to save your team. Talking sports wise, right? It is a team. It does take everyone. It's, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to magically show up and every problem the team has is going to go away. Now, I understand that quarterback play was a major issue for them, especially down the stretch last season. I certainly understand that, and I'm not arguing that getting Aaron Rodgers was going to make the Jets a better team. I'm not arguing that at all. But to say that just signing him was just going to magically win them a Super Bowl, that's just not the case. That's not the case. And this is still a really talented team. It certainly feels like their chances of winning a Super Bowl are gone in terms of making the playoffs. I mean, shoot, they beat the Bills. They still beat the Bills. That defense is really good. If Zach Wilson can just not, again, if he can, him and Dak Prescott, they can just not make mistakes, their teams have chances to have very, very good seasons. So we'll see what they do in terms of going out to get somebody else. I can't remember if they have already done that or what is going on there, but Robert Saleh has said that it is Zach Wilson that is going to be the starting quarterback, and they have their faith in him, which, obviously to a degree, of course he's going to say that. That's his job. But at the same time, the talent with Zach Wilson has never been the question. He's a very talented player. It's his ability to see the game and make decisions that has been holding him back. And that was really my big thing going back to college with him, right? Like, you'd see him throw a contested ball down the field that would end up getting caught and be a 70-yard touchdown. And don't get me wrong, it was an absolute dime, right? But then you'd look at the other side of the field and there's someone just running wide open that would have had the easiest touchdown in the world, and he didn't see that, right? So, playing quarterback is, I won't throw around percentages to make a guess, right? But in terms of what's more important, talent or seeing the game and processing the game, I would argue processing the game is a little more important. And if he can get that, if he can get it right, the Jets still have a pretty high ceiling on this season. Now, again, you're playing in the same division as the Bills, who you did beat, still a very talented team, right? I mean, we'll talk about Josh Allen in a sec here. That's going to be my last point we talk about. But still a very talented team over there in Buffalo. I already touched on the Dolphins. They're really good. And then a team I haven't touched on that really hasn't been talked about at all within NFL circles, I feel like, at least in mainstream media. The New England Patriots have a very good football team. Now, they're certainly not the high-flying offensive teams that we typically think of when we think of the top-end teams in the league, right? But that's a really well-rounded team. Bill Belichick is still a phenomenal coach. I don't care who you want to give the credit to in terms of the Brady-Belichick dynamic. But what I'm saying here is, I don't care who you credit more for the success the Patriots had between Brady and Belichick. At the end of the day, it's because both of them were there together, right? It's a combination of all things. And that's, I think, what I was trying to put out there with my statement about Aaron Rodgers and the Jets earlier, right? You're not winning because of one guy, right? One guy can make a difference in certain moments, certainly. But in terms of a 17-week season and playing 3 to 4 playoff games, it's a team effort. It's a coaching effort. It's a God, why am I blanking? It's an organizational effort. Good grief. It's an organizational effort. It's a coaching effort. It's everything, right? You need to be the most well-rounded for the most part in all areas. No one person is winning it all. So with that being said, the Patriots have a very well-rounded team. They're going to be a very well-coached team, and they're going to be a tough out. Now listen, their schedule is absolutely brutal, so penciling them in as a playoff team seems difficult to do, especially given that 6 of their games are going to be the Bills, Dolphins, and Jets. That's tough. That's a tough schedule. And I know they got the Cowboys in there early. Listen, they opened with the Eagles, right? Like, it's a brutal schedule for the Patriots, a brutal schedule, but that's a really good team. So we'll see what happens. The AFC East, the unfortunate part, it almost feels like, is they'll beat up on each other so much that, obviously praying for good health for all of these guys, all these teams, but it just seems like it's going to be such a gauntlet to get through the AFC East that it's going to be really hard to be healthy enough to put together a good playoff run. But at the same time, maybe it's the perfect, trial by fire sort of situation for them. Maybe it's going to be the perfect amount of tests that whatever team that comes out of the East, maybe they're just going to get tested the perfect amount where they're going to be resilient and have a great playoff run. Right? We never know for sure. But the AFC East is going to be a brutal division all around. And so for the Jets, obviously losing Aaron Rodgers week 1, obviously brutal, still a great team, but man, that's a great division. So, gosh, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I'll leave it at that. And let's touch on Josh Allen real quick, right? Because obviously the man is an incredible talent. Incredible talent. No question about it. Capable of doing things that no one else in the league is capable of, and really no one else in the history of the league has ever been capable of, to some degree. Right? The thing that concerns me, I don't know why I keep repeating the same phrase twice, but it just feels like every time we see Josh Allen play a great game, where you think to yourself, wow, this guy is as good as anyone, right? And he has those games, he has those moments where he goes toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes and is 13 seconds away from an AFC championship, right? We've seen it. It happens. We know that. But just no matter how many times he gives a performance like that, we get a performance like the one we saw on Monday. And that was bad. That was bad. Like, I'll say this. I've never played any level of quarterback besides, like, flag football QB at 10, right? Most of the knowledge I have of playing the position of quarterback comes from watching the YouTube channel, The QB School, which is a channel by JT O'Sullivan. Anyone who wants to get a little more insight on what it's like to watch film, be in a quarterback room, and just get a little more perspective, A, on how hard it is to be a quarterback, and just B, what goes into the X's and O's of the game. Really great channel that I highly recommend people check out. But most of my knowledge comes from that, right? And so one of the main things you learn, this is the most simplified version to put things. But the two main looks you're going to get as a quarterback is middle field closed, meaning 1 high safety, or middle field open, meaning 2 high safeties, right? And so 2 high safeties, you're typically thinking attack the middle of the field, where 1 high safety, you're thinking either one-on-one sideline shots or balls in the seam, right? And so typically when you have middle field closed and you have a post pattern on the play, if you see 1 high safety, you shut down the post. You don't throw the post because where is the post pattern being ran? Right into the safety in the middle of the field. Because what is in the middle of the field? The goal post. Wonder why it's called a post pattern? There you go, right? And so for Josh Allen to just continually unload bombs down the field on post patterns where a safety is sitting right over top of it, it's just inexcusable. Like, that's pretty basic level quarterbacking. And I understand he has the arm to make some ill-advised throws work out sometimes. I certainly get that. But man, to be doing it 2 or 3 times a game when it hasn't worked out any of the previous times, like at a certain point we just got to say, all right, let's just take what's there. Right, and it's really frustrating to watch because he is super, super, super talented, and it feels like we should have this, essentially Mahomes, Burrow, Allen duking it out for championships every year. It feels like that's how it should be. But the thing holding Josh Allen back is Josh Allen. And if he can get it right, the Bills are a Super Bowl contender. But if he can't get it right, things are going to get really, really ugly. Really ugly. And just, for the sake of promoting my blog, I will say, in my Bears rebuild, I highlighted that a bad season in Buffalo this year, I guarantee Stephon Diggs is going to want out. And in my rebuild, I had him going to the Bears. So that, just from a predicting the future perspective, that would be super fun to see. But for rooting for the best football, I really hope he figures it out. I really hope he does. But let's just be real about the situation. He consistently makes decisions that cost his team games. As much as he's capable of doing things to win his team games, he consistently costs the Buffalo Bills games with really bad decision making. And that's just is what it is. I'm not saying he's a bad person, not saying he's a bad talent. I'm just saying there are things he has got to fix. Has to fix if the Bills are going to win a Super Bowl. And there are no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So that's going to do it. Kind of our ending there on me just unloading on Josh Allen. No homo. But anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed. Please keep checking back. I'm going to try to do a preview for the weekend's games tomorrow, so check back for that. And enjoy the football, everyone. Enjoy sports. Don't get too caught up in it. It's a fun distraction from real life that we get every weekend, right? Get together with your family. Get together with your loved ones. Enjoy your time together. And have a blessed week, everybody. Thank you for tuning in.
I'm Trevor Hall.
And I'm Calvin Zeljak. Thanks for joining us
Down the Rabbit Hole.